Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today I will analyze the case of Vance Boelter. First I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Vance Luther Boelter was born on July 23, 1967, and lived in the state of Minnesota. According to his LinkedIn profile, he earned a bachelor's degree in international relations in 1996. In 2016, Vance earned an EDD in leadership. An EDD is a Doctor of Education. It is a professional doctorate typically designed for those aiming to work in K-12 settings or at teaching-oriented colleges and universities. Outside of these settings, the degree tends to have limited applicability and is not particularly flexible in terms of broader career options. One could argue this was reflected in Vance's career trajectory. The same year he graduated with his doctorate, Vance started working as a general manager at a 7-Eleven convenience store. Vance engaged in volunteer activities, which may have made better use of his degree. For example, in 2016, he was appointed by former Governor Mark Dayton to serve on the Governor's Workforce Development Council, and in 2019, Vance was appointed by Governor Tim Walz to the Governor's Workforce Development Board. In 2021, Vance became the CEO of a company called Red Lion Group. Supposedly, this was based in the Democratic Republic of Congo. It's not clear if this was a real company or not. On his LinkedIn page, Vance indicated that he was hoping to get back in the food industry, so maybe things weren't working out too well as a CEO. From August 2023 to February 2025, he worked for a funeral services company. As of June 2025, Vance Boelter worked for a company called Praetorian Guard Security Services. His wife Jenny was listed as the president and CEO of the company. Vance was the director of security patrol. The leadership team page of the company website indicated that Vance had been involved with security situations in Eastern Europe, Africa, North America, and the Middle East. As far as his personal life, he lived in a house in Green Isle, Minnesota, which is about 51 miles southwest of Minneapolis. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On June 14, 2025, at 2 a.m., the police in Champlin, which is 20 miles northwest of Minneapolis, responded to an emergency call at the home of a man named John Hortman and his wife, Yvette. John was a Democratic Minnesota state senator. The police found that John and his wife had been injured by gunfire. They were both taken to a hospital and survived. Later, video surveillance showed a man in a mask at the front door. The police said this man was Vance Luther Boelter. At 3:35 a.m., 2 police officers arrived at the house of Melissa Hortman in Brooklyn Park, about 9 miles away. Melissa was a Democratic Minnesota state representative. The police were there to check on her in light of what happened to John Hortman and his wife. As the officers approached Melissa's residence, they noticed a black Ford Explorer SUV in the driveway. The vehicle looked very similar to a police cruiser. For example, it was equipped with emergency lights. Vance walked out of the house wearing a police uniform, which included a badge and body armor. He fired on the officers before retreating into Melissa's house and fleeing out of the back door. The police returned fire, but Vance was able to escape. Officers discovered that both Melissa and her husband Mark had been struck by gunfire. Neither one of them survived. A massive manhunt for Vance Boelter was initiated. Here is what the police found during the course of their investigation. At 6:30 a.m., Vance arrived at a house at 4830 Fremont Avenue North, where he occasionally stayed in order to be closer to work. He had a second police-style vehicle parked behind this house. The window was broken. This makes it seem like Vance broke into the vehicle to retrieve something he wanted, perhaps something to aid in his escape. His roommates texted him and received a text back. Vance said, quote, "I made some choices, and you guys don't know anything about this, but I'm going to be gone for a while, maybe dead shortly, so I just wanted to let you know I love you guys both, and I wish it hadn't gone this way," unquote. Inside the vehicle that Vance left in the driveway at the home of Melissa Hortman, the police found a manifesto containing almost 70 names of people Vance wanted to murder. The list included John Hortman, Melissa Hortman, Governor Tim Walz, and Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan. Many of his targets were individuals who supported abortion rights. Also in the vehicle, the police found flyers containing the words, "No Kings." This is an anti-Trump group which had planned a protest in the area on the same day as the shootings. As far as any connection that Vance may have had to John Hortman and Melissa Hortman, they both served on the workforce development boards with Vance. At the time I'm making this video, the police believe that Vance is attempting to flee the Twin Cities, Minneapolis and St. Paul. That makes sense. I would be pretty surprised if Vance was shopping for real estate in the area. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. The security company where Vance worked as the Director of Security Patrol offered 3 services: residential security patrols, uniformed armed security, and event security services. On the website, there were images of a man in police-style gear and an SUV that looked like a police cruiser. Evidently, having this SUV resemble a police cruiser was not an accident. The website said, quote, "We drive the same make and model of vehicles that many police departments use in the U.S., unquote. The company offered membership plans charging $659 a month for 2 random armed patrols a week and $2,400 a month to visit 8 times. It's not clear if Vance was actually trying to make money with this business or if this was just an excuse for him to purchase and outfit vehicles to simulate police cruisers. I find it very hard to believe that anybody would pay $2,400 a month to be visited randomly by an armed security guard. Nothing says safety like having armed strangers unpredictably showing up at one's home. What are the chances that a service like this would actually prevent a burglary or other serious crime? A doorbell camera would provide continuous protection for a much lower cost. Item number 2. Vance established some type of religious nonprofit and said that he was ordained after attending a charismatic, spirit-filled Bible school. According to Vance, he met Jesus when he was 17 years old, and he wanted to tell everybody about Jesus. He also wanted to teach people that violence was not the answer. Hearing Vance decry violence is like Alec Baldwin hosting a seminar called Safety First, Firearms and You. Item number 3. Vance spent his volunteer career serving under Democrats, but registered as a Republican in the early 2000s. In 2019, he was listed on a state document as having no party preference. It appears as though Vance was very angry at several Democrats. The murders were politically motivated. In a curious twist, one of the murder victims, Melissa Hortman, actually voted with Republicans to cut access to state health benefits for illegal immigrants in Minnesota. She was the only Democrat to side with the Republicans in this vote. Melissa said, quote, "I know that people will be hurt by that vote, and we worked very hard to get a budget deal that didn't include that provision," unquote. Item number 4. What do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. Vance Luther Boelter was self-centered, immature, impulsive, irresponsible, reckless, sensation-seeking, overconfident, grandiose, erratic, unstable, violent, pathetic, nefarious, self-righteous, chronically dissatisfied, falsely believed he was special, had a sense of entitlement, and was exceedingly creepy. He did not really seem to have much of a direction in his life. Vance earned an EDD in leadership, but then managed a 7-Eleven convenience store. The only leadership he was demonstrating was leading customers to the rotating hot dog display. At some point, Vance became frustrated over politics in the United States and was having financial problems. Feeling powerless to make the changes he wanted and becoming increasingly desperate to create a legacy consistent with his grandiose vision of himself, Vance decided to murder people who had different opinions than he did. His arrogance pushed him to make his mark on society, even if by causing death and destruction. The plan that Vance developed was to make one of his security vehicles look like a police cruiser, drive around to the homes of politicians who he hated, and shoot them to death. He was hoping to kill almost 70 people, but was interrupted by the police after wounding 2 and killing 2. Vance somehow escaped from the police, but there is really nowhere he can hide for long. He has no intention of being captured and has probably accepted that death is the likely outcome. Vance was willing to make that sacrifice at the outset of his criminal adventure. Those are my thoughts on the case of Vance Boelter. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon.